What a wild game. Pitt does lose. Pitt loses to Miami 38-34 on this fall Saturday, as at least one of Pitt's goals that were a possibility entering this weekend of an outside chance at the college football playoff. That likely dash. Miami plays spoiler to the Pitt Panthers on this day. What a wild game it was. A lot to discuss here, to say the very least. This is the Pitt Postgame show here on Pittsburgh Sports Live, and of course, Pittsburgh Sports Now. All our postgame coverage is over there at Pittsburgh Sports Now. Alan Saunders game recap, and we're going to have video reaction here on PSL and PSN as well throughout the rest of the day. I'm Mike Asti. That's Mike Vukovcan. And Mike, what a game that was. I might be the game of the day, if not the game of the season, in terms of just a wild roller coaster ride, some controversy, some up and down play. Pitt's defense not really playing well enough in the first half. They turned it on late, interceptions, controversial picks, referees involved throughout the game, and Kenny Pickett trying to do his best. But again, Pitt does fall to Miami 38-34. We got a lot to unpack here. But what is I know you got a lot to say, I'm sure. What's your initial reaction, initial takeaway from this loss to Pitt? It's not like they necessarily played poorly, even though the defense took a while to get going. But Miami played much better than they've been playing all year. And Pitt certainly didn't necessarily play up to snuff and had their issues. Referees, of course, got involved. Yeah, I know.
The first thing I'm going to say is this is it's not a killer loss for Pitt. But I'm going to get away with the positives here because there's not much positive here. That's the only positive. Well, the other positive is Kenny Pickett's a superstar.
He really is. He did
throw, he threw picks, but it is what it is. He threw over 500 yards. When your quarterback throws for over 500 yards,
right,
you need to win the game. Pitt's defense sucked today. Let's just come out with that. And this is twice this year now where they couldn't put anything together as the game goes on. And this continues to be we were talking the other day about criticism of Pat Narduzzi and was it just and all that. And this is just
on a recent show.
Mic'd up.
Yeah.
This is just another example of that in that he is not a very good coach in game adjusting to what is happening. They let this Tyler Van Dyke, a freshman, throw for 400 plus yards. He made it look as though he was playing 7-on-7 out there with, touch quarterback. It was once again the same thing, letting his defensive backs and guys like Eric Hallett and some of the cornerbacks are going to get maybe criticized by fans, but he's asking those guys on the in the defensive backfield to do things that non-Miami guys can do. And once Miami smelled blood as far as being able to go after this secondary, they kept their foot on the pedal, and Pitt had no answer once again as far as how to stop a quarterback. They gave up 40-some points to Western Michigan.
Yeah.
Caleb Ellerby threw for close to 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's the formula to beat Pitt. If you have a quarterback that is capable of throwing the football, spreading it down the field, you can beat Pitt. And Miami did it today. And credit to them. That's 2 big wins now in a row for them.
Imagine if they played to this talent level all season. They have 5
and that's the other thing that has to be pointed out, but it's still no excuse, is that whereas when they lost to Western Michigan, Western Michigan probably didn't have a 4-star kid on their roster.
No.
Miami's roster is sprinkled with guys, and I know they had injuries, but they had a redshirt freshman quarterback, and their starting running back, Jalen Knighton, is a true freshman running back. So their offense looks pretty good, and he was rated the number 1 back in the country.
Yeah, they could be very good next year. Right.
Yeah. So they lost to teams with talent but it's still an inexcusable loss on the defensive side for Pitt. They just cannot continue to allow that to happen.
I think one thing that is very, very clear this year, and I know football is a team game, and this sucks to say, but if Pitt's season doesn't end up where they want it to be, and the fact that Pitt's season won't end up to be really, really special and maybe be beyond what it could be this year, it's clearly because of the defense. There's just no argument to it. The defense let the team down, incredibly so, in that Western Michigan game. That's a MAC school with multiple losses. No excuse there. At that point, the worst loss under Pat Narduzzi. They turned it on since Kenny Pickett became a Heisman candidate. They got to this point where people were even talking about an outside shot at the playoff. Obviously, that's gone. You did bring up the point, though, that it's not the end of the world. They easily could still win the Coastal. They could win the conference. And even if they aren't in the top four, which won't happen, obviously, now, but if they win the Coastal, they win the conference. They certainly could win the ACC, depending on that matchup against Wake or whoever else. New Year's Six Bowl would maybe be an incredible season for the Pitt Panthers, especially with expectations entering this year. But the defense would be why it's not more. And if they don't get there and don't do that, the defense is why. The defense certainly let them down again in this game, even though they did make some plays in the second half, but just not a good enough effort from the defense. What I do want to hit on here before we unpack this even further here, and of course, Pitt did lose to Miami 38-34. Second half, you see the fumble by Miami, then the ball rolls. Too bad somebody doesn't pick it up for Pitt and has somewhat more awareness. It goes out of bounds. Some controversy on where the ball was being called and whether or not that should have been a first down. It ended up being a first for Miami. Of course, that interception at the end. The defense wasn't good enough. Pat Narduzzi, a defensive guy, it has to be on him this year for the defense. The offense scored points. Addison was there with big plays, even though Pickett did throw picks. Any blame at all, any angst to the officiating in this game? Did they have any blunders in this game? Does any of your ire go, the referees didn't have their best day at the office? Obviously, you can't use that excuse, but is it fair to call this a controversial loss, or do you just tip your hat to Miami and Pitt need to be better?
I don't want to say it's a controversial loss because, once again, you gave up 400 yards to a quarterback. So
right.
We'll be fair about that. But the officiating in this game, and I'm not blaming it as to why they lost, but the officiating in this game was almost as bad as Pitt's defense. Almost. They should have, I have no idea why that was not a safety.
Right.
And,
there you go. That one too.
That's a safety. There's no other, Pitt gets the ball back and, has a chance. The play that you mentioned, I think Pitt got penalized. Some people are going to call for criticism of Narduzzi for having undisciplined defense or players again. But I think at least two, probably three of those roughing the passer penalties were BS. They're not roughing the passer penalties. Those are 45 yards of field position. The play that you mentioned, the controversial play with the fumble along the sideline with Mallory, I thought these referees today were awful, and that's sort of that's usually what happens with ACC officials. I think they're just pathetic a lot of times. And, but it's no reason why they lost, but I think they played a part. I think they played a part in the game.
And what Pat Narduzzi, I'm sure, is telling his team, or what any coach worth a damn would tell his team, it's your fault for letting it be in the hands of the referees, where the referees could screw you out of a game if you do believe these calls didn't go your way. You even heard it on the broadcast. The fans were still going crazy, but they were saying, Pat gotta kind of galvanize this team a little bit. They still were kind of complaining about some calls. They were showing up the safety signal there for a while after the call wasn't going to happen for them. You have to move on. And again, the players did. Offensively, Kenny Pickett played his what off, but it wasn't enough as Pitt does fall to Miami. What did Miami do in this game outside of having a quarterback have a great day, obviously, to beat Pitt? It sounds like a simple question, but Pitt's defense had looked better in recent weeks. Was it just Pitt's defense went back to how they were against Western Michigan? Because that was over a month ago now. Or did Miami do something or pose something different on offense that maybe was tougher than what we've seen? Clemson, obviously one of the worst offenses in the country, even though that's Clemson. They've been struggling all year. Miami, we said on Mic'd Up, we said on the preview show, Miami has been scoring points despite losing some games to this point. Certainly scored enough in this one to get the win.
I think it was a combination. It was just a bunch of things. Namely, they couldn't guard the Miami skill position players. Number two, today was like it was against Western Michigan. It was an atrocious day for them tackling. I don't know how many, when they go back and look at the missed tackles, just awful on Pitt's part. And the other thing is this is going to go. This is going to go probably on. I don't know how much it's going to be brought up because a lot of the focus is going to be on Pitt's defense. But Pitt's offensive line didn't have a good day today as far as protecting Pickett.
And that affects the interceptions. He hadn't thrown a pick in 200 attempts prior to today.
Yeah, though the first interception he had, that was just 100. He'll say this, and he'll probably focus on this that pick right before the half.
Right.
He had a wide open Jordan Addison for a touchdown.
Yep.
Instead, he tried to go to Mack. Bad decision, and if he hits that, we possibly have a tie ball game at the half.
The other pick late, you could argue, was kind of controversial, but
but the sacks that they allowed put Pitt behind the chains. They had to go farther. It ruined a couple of drives, especially the one where they had to kick a field goal. And that was something. If we want to bring up one thing, I know you're going to get to this, but while it's on my mind, I don't really have that much of a. People were on here, of course, blaming Mark Whipple and everything, but
Jesus, I mean, it's like death.
The only thing that I didn't like was the play calling when Pitt had to settle for the field goal. They were at the 5-yard line, 1st and goal. I would at least try to run the ball at least once. Abanaconda is a tough runner down there. And then trying to have, when you have the best quarterback in college football on 3rd and 5, to try to do a trick play and have Lucas Krull throw a touchdown pass. You might want to do that if you're up, or not when it's not when it game's on the line. Not game wasn't technically on the line, but they needed to get a touchdown there. I wasn't a huge fan of having a tight end throw it from the 5-yard line. I know you're trying to catch them off guard and whatever special you want to do, the Philly special part 2. Use your quarterback and have him throw. But I didn't. So other than that, I didn't have a problem with Whipple. But those were the 3 big things for Pitt: awful defense, awful tackling, or awful coverage, terrible tackling, and offensive line play wasn't as good as it has been for the first 7 games.
And the offensive line is always underrated, always unsung, but a large part of any offensive success. Without the offensive line playing well, you have no chance. Kenny Pickett picked it up a little bit for them, but for Pickett to be a Heisman candidate, for him to have the numbers he's had, and for Pitt's running game to emerge a little bit in recent weeks that didn't really get going in this game, that's all because of the offensive line playing so well in recent weeks. If the offensive line struggles, it's going to be harder on Pickett. He has less time to make decisions, probably bumped him out potentially of the Heisman race now. And then the running game wasn't moving, as the running game, 45 yards for Davis. Abanikanda gets 28 yards after having over 100 in recent games. But they weren't utilized as much either.
No. I think they saw what they had with the Miami secondary, as far as that being a thing that they could attack.
Right.
And they were just going to go after that. They didn't want to focus
because Davis, to be fair, was 7.5 on an average in terms of when he did have the football. But this game didn't really dictate to the ground game, but it certainly helps the QB. The offensive line did struggle in this game, but the number one factor for them losing is because of the defense was not good enough. A lot of the chatters here, though, and we talked about this already, Mike, but You got to say Pitt wasn't good enough to win this game. They just didn't get it done on defense, even though the calls were bad. But a lot of the chatters here, I'm sorry, but the referees screwed us. That's like 4 or 5 of these chatters. I mean, that's what you're going to hear from some fans. Yes, these were controversial calls, but you have this every game. If you watch more than just your team, every game. And again, the phrase has to be, the line has to be, Pitt allowed the referees to be a part of this game and part of this decision by not playing well enough, especially in that first half. So that's how we ended up getting here. Pitt does lose 38-34.
The one call that's going to come back, and it's going to I'll be curious to see if Pat's able to keep his emotions in his post-game press conference.
We'll have that for you too. Yep.
Yeah, how much he goes after the referees. But the one play that really killed him and halted any sort of comeback was that safety. You get the safety, then you're down by 2 points.
You get the ball, right?
You get the ball. They're going to be punting. From deep in their territory.
And that's Pickett with field position.
Right, exactly. Right. That's the play
right.
That's probably sticking in everyone's mind. It'll probably be in Pitt's mind. That was a real, and for the life of me, I have no idea what angle or what they saw in that wasn't it appeared as there didn't even appear to be any gray area with that. It appeared to be Knighton was tackled in the end zone for a safety. 2 points Pitt. They get the ball, and for whatever reason, the referees thought he went over the line of scrimmage, and he clearly did not. And that was obviously a pretty big call late in the game.
Oh, it was. And again, Miami has a lot of talent. If they played like this all year, they would be right there vying for a conference title as well. They could be very good next year. It's been years and years for them to finally get back. They always recruit well. It just hasn't happened on the field. They played up in this game, and Pitt knew, especially after beating Clemson, there were going to be some teams wanting to play spoiler and ruin things for them like they've been doing for these teams over the years. That did happen on this day, but of course, goals still in front of them with the Coastal and then beyond. Pitt does lose this, and I had to laugh while you were talking, Mike. Not of what you were saying, but this is insane. This is going to segue into what I did want to ask here. This is a comment from the chat here. I now also no longer believe in Kenny Pickett. He keeps missing open receivers. I can't even actually add in the other comment because there was a swear word there that I'm surprised our parental advisory did not immediately bump out. I got to ask you a serious question, though. Pickett had the numbers in this game, 500 plus yards. He did have a couple picks, which they go against him, whether they're his fault or not. They go against him. That's not good, of course, when you're looking to compare yourself all across the country. I was right there with you heading into this game that he was a Heisman candidate for sure. If you're going to be fair, he really should be a finalist, if not win the award. Having the best season for any college QB in the country this year. Goes over Marino yet again, all the historic numbers throughout his Pitt career. A great legacy player for the Pitt Panthers and a great season this year that's going to get him in the NFL. But fair to him or not, he does now have 2 losses. One of them to Western Michigan, which is a MAC team, even though he threw 6 TDs, which tied a program record in that game. Not his fault, played well. Does have this loss, now a conference loss, to a Miami team that's lost several times this year, even though they have tons of talent. When you're talking Heisman, it does come down to wins and losses as well as how you play. Does losing this now bump him out of the Heisman race?
No, of course. Yeah.
We've seen people win it with 2 or 3 losses before. His numbers are still better than everybody else.
Yeah, but they were coming from, as David Pollock said this morning on game day, I think a lot of people felt this way. Yeah. That if Kenny Pickett heading into this game, if he was playing for Miami, Ohio State, he said, I tweeted it, his quote was, if Kenny Pickett was the quarterback for Ohio State,
he'd be the front runner right now.
Georgia or Alabama, he would be the clear front runner for the Heisman.
Clear. There's no one would get close to his numbers.
Right, exactly. It was going to be, as I always said, it would have been a win for Pitt, the Pitt program, if Kenny Pickett
just a finalist,
just showed up at New York.
Yeah,
that's a win. Kenny Pickett was not going to win the Heisman.
Could he crawl into still showing up in New York though? Because there's not that many legit candidates this year, and there are people argued with me today on Twitter about Caleb Williams. He's only started 2 games as we're speaking now. Can you really send Caleb Williams over Pickett?
No, they're going to do what they normally do, and they'll send. It depends who loses here, but whoever your top four teams
Right.
are,
A lot can happen.
you're going to pick. You're going to put those players in.
You could send four guys though, and maybe that could slide. I don't
Quarterback
know.
from
Probably
Alabama.
not.
Quarterback from
Yeah.
Alabama is going to go. Did Michigan State win today?
I got to double check that. That was obviously they're playing Michigan with the two unbeaten.
Michigan State's winning with a minute left, so they're going to win. Their running back now is going to.
They were losing earlier. That's something.
He rushed for 200 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, obviously they have to.
He's going to be He's going to be. I would guess right now that he is going to be the front runner for the.
Yeah, undefeated. And if they obviously, if they win the conference, they're a playoff team. But if they lose to Ohio State, then maybe that bumps him out. It's going to be a tough year because there's so much of a log jam for that top 4. You could argue 6 or 7 teams.
The other difference, though, Mike, is that Michigan State is going to, with this win now, beating Michigan, they're going to move up.
Oh,
they're going to move up inside the top 5. So even if they lose again, they're still going to be somewhere in the top 15. With this loss for Pitt,
oh yeah, they're out. Yeah,
17.
Right.
They might hang at 25. I doubt it. They'll probably be out. So that'll kill them right there. So, and I know.
Unless West Virginia beats Iowa State, because that would be the competition for the top 25 potentially. If Iowa State has a loss, they might hang above them still.
And I know some people look at me and say, you really don't believe this, but I do. Losing this game for Pitt and losing this game for Kenny Pickett probably isn't if they don't end up winning the Coastal, because what was all the talk? What were we talking about the past 2 weeks on our mic'd up show? And what's everyone talking about Pitt right now?
Well, they got to win the
Kenny Pickett, Heisman.
Kenny Pickett,
are they
Heisman.
going to be in the playoffs? Right. All that stuff is eliminated now. They're sole focus.
Okay. It should have been about Coastal in the ACC, but you're right.
Exactly. The sole focus the rest of the year will be on what it should have been all year, and that's winning the Coastal, playing in the ACC title game.
Those were the goals that Pat Narduzzi circled on the board before the year. And if they still could accomplish those 2 goals, that's why I said this sucks, but it's not the end of the world. And again, for this entire season, this isn't even close to as bad of a loss as Western Michigan.
No, it's not even close. Like I said,
right. That was a bad loss that could ruin your chances. I mean, that right there should have ruined the playoff.
Well, what this loss does is this eliminates the talk about how bad of a loss Michigan lost and what they could have accomplished.
Because it wouldn't matter anyway, right?
It wouldn't matter anyways. And now there's with 4 games left, their focus has to be on winning the Coastal.
Right.
And the standings, I wrote those down. It looks like it's going to be they're going to have a 2-game lead over Virginia Tech. This thing is going to looks like right now, who the hell knows how it's going to finish, but this is going to come down to Pitt, Virginia, and Miami. Those 3 teams right there. Obviously, Miami's going to have the 1-game lead over Pitt because of the head-to-head. And this very well could come down to the game where Virginia comes to Pitt in 3 weeks.
Well, I was going to get there, and we will get there in a moment. But Pitt,
and Miami has a tough schedule the rest of the way. They
do.
Florida State, Virginia Tech, and 2 of those are on the road.
Yeah.
So I still see another. I see another loss in Miami's future.
Right.
But Pitt, the game that always scared me was that Thursday night game against North Carolina.
Well, I was going to say that Pitt's issue clearly is legit quarterbacks that can hit receivers if they lose the man-to-man coverage. That could be a problem against North Carolina. That could be a problem against Virginia remaining on the schedule. Certainly if they lose both, this is no longer a special year, but if they lose one, they're still going to have to sweat it out based on what we have happened the rest of the season. And yeah, Miami's schedule, they do have some games they could certainly lose. Granted, Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech have also not been that great to this point. Virginia Tech lost 4 straight entering this weekend. So they could come out of those with victories, and Pitt is going to have to be mindset focused on winning every game. It is a coach speak. They're going to have to be focused on just scheming and winning every game that week. And the only blessing in disguise, maybe, Mike, as you're mentioning, the only blessing in disguise maybe this could have created, And maybe this Pitt team needed this, and maybe it happened after losing to Western Michigan to motivate them to be this good. And the defense did play well until this game. Is now there's nothing in their mind outside of we have to win every game. They can't be if they would get on Twitter last week, they could see, oh my God, we have a chance at the playoff, or they're looking at schedules of what other teams do. And Michigan's lost now. Oklahoma almost lost. Oh my God. None of that, it matters now to them anymore. They have to make sure they get the Coastal, because what we also have said earlier this season, once Pitt got to 5-1, especially after beating Clemson, with everything that shook out around college football and around the Coastal in the ACC this year, that if Pitt did not win the Coastal and did not play at least in the ACC title game with how good they got at one point this year, that would then be very disappointing to end the year not in that game when you're at 5-1, when you beat Clemson the way you did. So even maybe in a down year for some of those big wins they had, the way this conference has gone, Pitt has been overall the best team all year. This stings certainly for Pitt fans, and we're seeing that in the chat here as it's Pitt fans now at each other. It's what's going to happen after a game like this. But
there's a couple injuries too that we have to consider that could be big.
Right,
Kalijah Cansey hurt that leg in the first quarter. And then Tazier Mack, who was having a really good game. He's turned into Pitt's second receiver. He didn't return, or he left in the second half, and he was out of uniform with a sling on the left shoulder.
Yeah. And imagine if Addison didn't play in this game, because he was questionable heading into this game. Obviously, that could turn at a dime.
The good thing is they have Duke next week. Pitt's not going to lose to Duke.
No.
So they'll have a chance to, get their focus back, keep things, and then get ready for North Carolina. That's gonna be a huge game, and they got to hope for some help, but really they don't need help because everything is in front of them. And the other thing is all this we mentioned all the other focus as far as Twitter and players making appearances on ESPN and all the
great for the program.
For the program, but it's also the first time this program has probably had that since I don't know how much they got with Boyd. My point is,
I would say, wow,
winning causes distractions when you're not used to winning. You got to learn. You got to learn to win. Alabama can have those interviews every week in Clemson because they're used to it. They're used to College Game Day coming. They're used to being on all these shows. Nick Saban and Pat Narduzzi hadn't had the media exposure that he's had this week as far as live appearances in his whole career at Pitt.
He's got national
I'm not
exposure
saying he was
this
distracted,
week. Right.
But same with Kenny Pickett. This is all new to them as far as learning how to handle all this. And, maybe this is a lesson learned, but the good thing is we keep trying to say, and hopefully Pitt fans will remember this or keep this in focus and not, jump off of one of the 1,000 bridges in Pittsburgh. Is
right.
Everything's still in front of them. It was a loss. Could have gave them some more cushion. Didn't. Now they got to get back and worry how to stop Sam Howell in North Carolina in 2 weeks.
Yeah, Mike Vukovcan, Mike Asti here. This is our Pitt postgame show, Pittsburgh Sports Live, Pittsburgh Sports Now. You want to go to PSN for the postgame coverage as we're speaking, and I'll, of course, stay here to PSL for this show, which will live there, and also video reaction from Narduzzi and the players about this loss to Miami, losing 38-34, Pitt's second loss of the season. Mike, what did you see there?
One of the reasons I try to stay off, it's hard because of what we do.
Yeah, I'm addicted to Twitter. I can't deny.
I try to stay off Facebook.
Right.
And I try to stay off message boards because they're the.
Oh, that's the worst. That is the worst.
God, that's the first thing I because I want to post Allen's game story here. So if people see me sometimes looking down, it's not that I don't want to look at you. I'm trying to put some stuff on the site as we're talking.
Am I scary even without a mask? I know it's Halloween.
The first thing I see here, see you, Narduzzi. It's time to go. You need to get fired. That's the first thing.
Mike, I don't know if you have
going on these things because it's just so reactionary.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the chat here while we're doing this, of course, it's not even just the one guy that I read earlier. It's now several people about Pickett being overrated and jumping off the Pickett bandwagon. I know he never belonged in the Heisman conversation and all of that. And these are from people with usernames, Talk is Pitt or Let's Go Pitt, Big Pitt fan, all against Pickett and Narduzzi to this point. And if we were seeing what they were saying on any of these message boards or social media even 2 days ago, it very likely was Pickett got to win the Heisman. Narduzzi's coach of the year candidate. Look at Pitt right now. So it obviously is very reactionary. This is going to be a loss that'll sting. All of that is just ludicrous and asinine. Narduzzi did turn this ship around when many thought he should have been fired weeks ago. And at the time, he deserved, we touched on this in the past show too. Pat Narduzzi deserved all the Pat criticism he's got. But if you're going to be fair, he's also deserved the respect for turning this around this year and making this a special year. If Pitt finishes the year as an ACC champion in a New Year's Six bowl game, that is a great year for him. And certainly a great year for Pickett the way he's been playing. Pickett is not responsible for this loss or the Western Michigan loss. But again, that's where fans are going to go. They're going to run amok here. Any other thoughts, Mike, as we kind of wrap things up? Pitt does lose this game. Obviously, the loss stings. Unfortunately, it's now splitting the fan base, as insane as that sounds. We're kind of back to where it was. Pitt is going to be able to get a game that they can kind of get back going in coming up, but then they will have tougher games on that schedule remaining. The Coastal is still in front of them. The ACC is still in front of them. They certainly could still win a conference and then get New Year's Six, and that would be a great year for Pitt. They're getting that recognition. That's been good. They haven't had it in a very long time. They didn't even get this national recognition when they were in the ACC title game the last time because they kind of crawled in there. They want to get in there legitimately to keep this up. Certainly great for the program the way this year has been, even though you like it to be better and those losses do sting. Any final thoughts? Obviously, Pickett played well. The defense flat out did not. The calls, I could see why they would sting, but that's not why they lost this game.
They have to watch that while I say that everything is still in front of them. He also, the team has to watch that this thing doesn't, because there's always a chance, and this is not a Pitt thing. This is, they play a couple tough teams coming.
This could unravel. Yeah.
2 out of the 3 last. That's what his focus has to be, and that's why I think it's good that they don't play North Carolina next.
Right.
And they play Duke, and they can, feel good about themselves, and then they come back home against North Carolina. You have back-to-back games with North Carolina and Virginia. Those are 2 tough opponents. So you lose to those 2 teams, and I don't want to, throw the negative in here, but you lose to those 2 teams.
Oh, it's all over then. Yeah.
And then it's a 4-loss season, and then
right.
SOS. So
yeah. Oh, true.
They're going to watch. They're going to win one of these next. Hopefully, 2 of these next, because I think they'll beat. They'll beat Syracuse, and they'll beat Duke.
Well, Syracuse has played tough with some teams, but I think the Pitt will be favored, of course.
Pitt plays
offensively.
Well. They're one of those teams, just as Pitt plays awful every year against North Carolina, for whatever the reason.
Yeah,
they always play well against Virginia and Syracuse.
Yeah, so, even on the road, you're correct.
Even on the road, Virginia's a team that somehow they just always match up well against, and they come out on top. Same with Syracuse, but Virginia's a little bit different this year with Armstrong at quarterback. They got a guy that can swing a little bit. They put up points.
Right.
So we'll see if they're playing for something, and that's a couple weeks away. But that'll be Pickett's last home game. That'll be senior day. If they're playing a lot, that should have the same. If they're playing for something, that should have the same atmosphere as the Clemson game, as far as attendance, raucous crowd, all that. Trying to go to the ACC championship, and just for Pickett too. His last game at Heinz Field. It should be, 50 to 60,000 people there. If they have as many people that care about the program as they say they do.
Yeah. If for nothing else, Kenny Pickett has proven some doubters wrong, and he certainly has helped his own individual career and his own individual legacy in case this season. But as you're mentioning, for Pitt to say this is a special year and they've achieved their goals, it is still about the Coastal and the ACC, but these are not gimme games the rest of the way. Duke might be, but then it's North Carolina, Virginia, and Syracuse. Syracuse could be competitive. Virginia has a lot to play for. North Carolina has a great quarterback. They still have a lot to play for. If Pitt would lose 2 out of those 4, people would then be very legitimately able to say, Yeah, it was great for a while. You were on national TV and you were in the Heisman race, Coach of the Year, Paul Bear Bryant Award, etc. But at the end of the day, you lost 4. You didn't win the conference. You're in a mediocre bowl game again. It's same old Pitt. Let's move on to a new era. That's going to be the off-season talk. To have that not be the off-season talk, you got to legitimately win the conference, or at least get in that ACC title game by winning the Coastal, because that is very much in front of you. Pitt does lose this one, though, 38-34. I know that loss is going to sting, but hopefully after our instant reaction show, this is our instant reaction, cooler heads can eventually prevail. People can enjoy their holiday weekend here, and people can, maybe read their own comments and realize, does that make sense what I'm saying? I just would ask people, it's the Herm Edwards. Don't press send. Read it again. Read it back to yourself before you just press send on what you're saying, because a lot of the time it just does not make sense. We are not done at all here on Pittsburgh Sports Live and throughout the network, despite Pitt being done for the day with their loss. I will have a post-game show for West Virginia after their game against Iowa State ends. That is a barn burner, as Iowa State looks to just hang on to a top 25 ranking after a big victory. They lose WU. That's not going to be happening for them any longer. And then the nightcap, Penn State, Ohio State. Penn State, a major underdog, but can they pull off the upset? And if they do, Michigan State might start popping some champagne with Michigan having lost. If Ohio State loses, Michigan State will be the only opportunity for the Big Ten to get in that playoff, since Iowa also lost. A crazy, spooky Halloween weekend around the football world, in Pitt right now needs to get back in the driver's seat, needs to get back focused and stop scaring their fans, because they certainly did that on this Halloween Saturday.